Good evening, everyone. It is evening now, so thank you for this opportunity, Mr. Pawar, Mr. Tharani, for participating in this event. Disclaimer clause, my physique will tell you that I'm not a great cricket player. I need to do work a lot to get to that level. Secondly, I know we're running a little bit late, but I'm told that I speak very fast, so I will try to keep to that promise and try to finish some of the thoughts I want to share with you on the topic for today. I think NIIT has been a very important partner, as Mr. Tharani pointed out, in the learning ecosystem for corporate India, and forums like this obviously go a long way in advancing the thought process around what should be done by learning and partner management people across the country as they think about what are the problems which are facing the talent pool. How can we funnel the profits of this talent pool we are sitting on, and how can we move them towards growth and development? Interestingly, the topic for this keynote, Thrive, Accelerating Growth in a Broken Talent Environment, is something that resonates very deeply with both Access and me personally. We are actually running a project in Access called Thrive, which is to reduce our attrition. We are definitely not thriving, so someone else is, in spite of the project. So Thrive was very, very topical. Over the last year, we have worked very diligently on trying to recraft our proposition, our practices, and in some aspects, our jobs and organization, a project. As I said, we are also calling Thrive. However, I must admit, I do not completely agree with the statement that the talent environment is broken. What I really believe is that a combination of factors around people's aspirations and expectations of works have changed dramatically. And Mr. Tharani pointed out that how COVID has really changed the game completely. While, as he rightly pointed out, technology has played a very important role. Everything was available, and when COVID did hit, all of us managed using technology. Work never stopped. We were able to deliver to our clients, to our customers, as if nothing had changed. But COVID forced us to look at things differently. So right now, we are in a period of transition, and we will find ourselves, I believe, in a broken environment unless we adapt to some of these changes. So let me use this opportunity to first talk about and challenge some beliefs all of us in management have on the talent environment which is facing us. So let me highlight some of those areas. So I believe there are three questions we should be asking ourselves. Are careers still central to work aspirations? That's the first question. The 20th century career narrative, of which even I was an advocate of, has fundamentally changed. The story was, through hard work and effort, we all become part of a professional and aspirational class. In the 21st century, I fully recognize the futility of building the same narrative for my son, not only because he will enter a different workplace, but also because of the changing aspirations, attitudes, and increasing uncertainty over the future. Frankly, I call my third son as a spiritual experience. He's uplifting me spiritually because, I want to discuss a plan for years and he's not interested in tomorrow. And it is what I think a representative of what is happening to current and the workforce which is going to come to us in the future. The career is no longer an upward curve you can plot out when you enter the workforce. People are viewing associations with companies as a series of experiences where they build their skill sets and they move on from one experience to the other. So if your company can provide that experience, great. Otherwise, there are enough opportunities available to get that experience. And frankly, in my feeling is that the problem is even bigger than this, and I'll talk a little bit about later. So where people see themselves 5 years down the line is no longer what they're thinking about. What does this job experience allow me to do with my existing skill, and what skills can I build on towards the next experience I want? People's personal brand no longer uses the employer brand as a marker, but looks at specific skills and experiences towards how they position themselves as talent. For many of us, employer names were how we wrote our resumes. That is what our anchor was. If you take a look at LinkedIn, for example, the headlines now are less about Google, Amazon, and whatever names you want to take. But people talk about did product at Zomato, did build payments at Axis Bank. So they're talking about what they have done. Organization is just the means. And employees, especially younger ones, these days are getting influenced so much more by social media. So my second worry is that in most of the cases, because the information feed is coming from all over, they themselves don't know what they want. But they definitely know and they definitely want what someone else is doing. So you're getting so influenced by what is happening around you that you might not know this is the experience I want, but if you see someone else on LinkedIn doing something or showcasing something, you immediately feel that if my organization is not doing that, this organization is not the right place for me. So there are two problems. One, they want experiences. Second, they want experiences which others are getting in many cases. They're not the experience they want because they don't know what they want. And there's nothing wrong in it. A lot of us in our life sometimes don't even realize what we wanted in the first place. So nothing wrong with the kids who are getting bombarded by all these messages. So my view is that the premium that is being put on variety of experiences is such that they just want something different. Perhaps the craft that we have to practice as leaders is to shape a new career narrative. Show our people that we are building institutions that can lead to their own skill building and development through challenging assignments. And brand our organizations not on what we offer them, but everything they can possibly achieve with us. So there is a clear difference which I believe needs to be looked for. Second was around, does advocacy still mean loyalty? Speaking of brand, the belief has been that strong brands attract the best talent, and advocacy has been how we measure the effectiveness of our employee brand and proposition. Why join was for the brand, and people stayed if they felt they were happy to advocate for us. So as a CEO or HR head, higher employee SAT scores meant that we could sleep easy, our people were happy, our people will stay, and not only they'll stay, they'll get more people to come and work for us. But increasingly we are seeing a divergence in how people are advocating and what they actually do. In line with I spoke about on the career narrative, you can love the brand, the proposition, and your manager. That sentiment can be better than what you told us 6 months back. And you as an employee still see value in doing something different and will leave you. So they're saying all the great things to you and you're feeling great, but still that employee is leaving you. This does not mean the death of the employer brand in my mind, rather quite the opposite. Increasingly, the proposition needs to communicate an ability to create those distinctive experiences for every single employee. Brand will still be what gets people in the door. There is perhaps a degree of commoditization of employer propositions. In most cases, it is almost a no-brainer today to implement best practices. So all of us are busy implementing the same best practices. All our employees are feeling that they can get those practices somewhere else also. So they're looking for that different thing, which in many cases they don't know what it is. A best-in-class proposition is no longer the most it once was. We need to address the employee experience, not only in terms of the experience with HR, but their experience with more with the seamlessness of their work. What enablers have you provided? How many conversations are you having? What are you asking them about the other experiences they want to have, share, work on? How are they recognized? How regularly are they recognized? Some of those very factors are changing as we move along. Last question we need to ask is, at least since I said 3 questions, are we still in a world of talent scarcity? Oh, sorry. My apologies. I talked about advocacy, sorry, apologies. This was on talent scarcity. We need to fundamentally transform our mindset on talent. For too long, we have built our talent supply and selection on a mindset of scarcity. It is scarce, getting the people of a certain kind, make them go through let's say, a cylinder, an output comes out which you desire, and everything is okay from there. Our thought process was talent is rare, we must find the right people for the right job. Our templates have been based on what has worked in the past. If the COVID pandemic put the career narrative at risk, it had the positive side of opening our eyes to the fact that our colleagues could run large corporations, including our bank, from remote locations. Our work never stopped. So the next question was, what if our traditional templates of hiring constrained us from what we could access in terms of talent? For example, in Access, we rethought work formats, sourcing strategies, and work placements to say, let us go and find the talent where it is. We did launch a gig opportunities to hire freelancers and allowed both new hires and our existing colleagues in corporate roles to work from anywhere. And the number is not small. Today we have, I was sharing with Mr. Pawar, we have 3,000 employees who actually work from home, completely from home. They don't have to come to office, ever. Are we seeing lower attrition? Are we seeing them more involved? Well, yes, but again, the engagement bit is something we need to work on. So it's a work in process. We also said we would be permanently hybrid. We announced that in June 2021. This is almost 2 years back. At that time, we took the decision we'll be permanently hybrid. This moved us at least towards a mindset of abundant talent. So as I mentioned in my opening remarks, I don't believe that the environment is broken on talent. I think it's just a different way and a perspective we need to bring in terms of how are we looking at our talent. In fact, to embrace the democratic dividend of India, we believe that the prime source of competitive advantage for us is that, and we need to ensure that we somehow go and get those people. We obviously must commit to an agenda of diversity and inclusion and look beyond traditional templates. We obviously have to do that. We have to be willing to take more risks, to look beyond just brand names and work where they know they have an impact. They are even self-motivated to acquire new skills towards deeply challenging assignments. And it links deeply to the broad issues this Confluence has aimed to address over the years. We have the ability through skilling and learning programs to take even talent that is 40% ready and bring them to 100% within their organizations. So where is the challenge? In my mind, I think I did earlier, anyway. This is too slow, sorry. Doesn't matter. So where is the challenge? If we can do all this stuff, all of us here know that the last 2 years have put forth almost every strategy we used to have in the past up for grabs. Anything is questionable. And we think we have the visibility on what challenges might be facing us. And Mr. Tharani talked about some of them. Great resignation, quiet quitting, rage applying. Tomorrow, I'm sure there'll be something else. But why is this going on? And while the descriptions can change, they are grounded, I think, in my mind, in the shifts in the talent landscape we just spoke of. And as we aim to harness the benefits of this demographic dividend, which I talked about, we have to accept a change that while many of us have built our careers around our constraints of making the best of what was made available to us or was available to us, this generation, where experience of technology, of travel, of knowledge have been within reach, and whether we like it or not, there is no changing the way they see the world is very different from the way we see the world or we have seen the world. So to that end, I propose that there are 4 areas which are there on the slide. We need to rethink our traditional approaches to accelerate growth. One is reimagine jobs. There is a definition coined by Linda Gretton, she's from London Business School, for bad jobs. Long hours, low pay, no training, tough bosses, and poor prospects. While it is quite a severe definition, and there has been a lot of work done on the level of training and managers, we could do much more for our people by reimagining jobs. For example, in Access, we have taken a big bet on the mobile as a workplace. Now, our vision is, and I'm not saying it applies to everyone, but at least that's what we're trying to do in Access. Our vision is to ensure that we can bring the entire organization on the mobile of our employee. And that includes training. That includes instant training. That includes training which is given over a period of time. It includes nudges we give to the employees. It includes all the HR work which they want to do. It tells them, guides them every day on what needs to be done. It might sound intrusive, but people who embrace it will very quickly realize that it is actually helping them get their work done much more efficiently. This has been 3 years in the making, so it's not happened overnight. My vision is that ultimately that particular app, which we call Siddhi, is personified for every employee of Access. The app shows up in front of you for you. Not it's an app and it works only in a particular way. It will identify you, it will know what you are, what you do, what you're not good at, and serve itself on that basis. That's the vision. So in my mind, it is all about reimagining what you can do for the individual and completely changing how you present the organization to the individual rather than the other way around. Earlier, the method was, this is the organization, please adopt yourself to the organization. We are saying we'll change how we present ourselves to you over a period of time so that organization is working for you. And that's the big change which you're trying to bring. This is, as I said, this is not only a question of employee satisfaction, it will also lead to productivity improvement. Obviously, there is a hidden message here. We are seeing early success with the launch of such a journey for our relationship managers. And as I said, right now it has been done for the Salesforce. We have brought the CRM functionalities of prospecting, managerial review, seamless digital processes, and gradually taking the content to them. And it's unfair, but what I've done is that if, for example, you're making mistakes, we will serve the training to you next day in the morning, and you have to go through the training and maybe a small quiz. And if you don't do it, you cannot mark attendance. And the only way you can mark attendance in the organization is through that app. There's no other way. And by the way, the only way you can mark attendance is if you're hybrid, it's fine, but if you're in office, you better be only 300 meters away from office. Otherwise, it's not allowed you to mark attendance. So, using technology innovatively to ensure that it's serving both the purposes at the same time. Second is rewiring learning and development, which is very, very close to your heart. In a world of talent abundance, we must recognize that we cannot hire for fit to the job. And that is my fundamental proposition. Because the job itself is changing every day. How do you train someone for a job and say, oh, by the way, the job is changed. So when the job is changed, you'll train again and again? It's not feasible and practical. So what we have to train our people is to be able to adapt to this rapidly changing environment. And my worry is, are we thinking enough about that? Are we in our learning and development thinking more about training the people on managing and adopting and embracing change rather than training them for that particular job in itself? And this is obviously all about the digital future. And if we can think about and reposition training differently, I think it will not only appeal to the employees, it will also bring a fundamental change in terms of how this training is perceived. Right now, training is perceived as something they need to do to go to the next level. It's an intrusion. It has to become something else. And the only way it becomes something else is when they know that if I do this, it is helping me adapt to this change and get those distinctive experiences I'm looking for. Rethink workplaces. Workplace flexibility is obviously now table stakes in any conversation about a people proposition. Mr. Pawar just told me that I think at NIIT you're still working from home. At Access, we started in the early days of the pandemic. I told you that we moved permanently hybrid. People still ask me all the time that, are you going to change the rule? I mean, have you said it, but did you mean it? But the fact of the matter is that the attrition of the 3,000 people I talked about is still similar to what we see in the rest of the organization. So while you like the fact and you love the fact maybe that you can work from home, but if you get a different experience, maybe you get a salary hike, you're still willing to go back to office ways of working. So there is, as I said, there is still a kind of bit of a transition happening here. There are employees still don't know what they want. They like what they have, but the desire for something else is also as much there. And so all the stuff which we talked about, Great Resignation and all of that. Well, our customer roles are required to be in the branches for regulatory reasons, but that has not stopped us from continuing to push for internal innovation enabling that. We are embracing the new reality. We had to go deep and rework our processes and how we, as in a very seamless way as an organization, have people doing gigs, people permanently at home, people permanently in hybrid, and some people coming permanently to branches. And if you add those overall numbers up, if I include the outsourced staff, we're talking about 250,000 people here. So it's not a small number. And I'm just saying the scale is there because a lot of people from IT companies, I just want to give an idea of the scale. So it's not small numbers. In the early days, we thought that maybe managers would become redundant because everyone can do and self-manage themselves. But we very quickly realized that that does not work at all. We need even more the managers there now to be talking to these people on a continuing basis, to look at what work they have done, to motivate them, to question in terms of how the output was being delivered, and so on and so forth. The challenge, in my mind, for a manager in this environment has become even more complex. So it's not only about training employees for a changing job, it is also training our managers to manage these employees who want different work experiences, who don't know what they want, and deliver on a day-to-day basis. So that's the second challenge. These managers are critical to the connection between people and the organization and increasingly becoming the sole translator of employer proposition. They are the only ones. I mean, earlier when you're coming to an office environment, there were other people. Now, your only connection to the organization in many cases is just as manager. So they are the storehouses of all the organization knowledge and the last frontier for every change we want to drive. Reshaping the role of the manager is crucial to the success of these modern workplaces. And I think we are underestimating the challenge involved in that. Lastly, revamping the reward systems. Looking at rewards as annual cycles in predefined templates is not going to work. And it is not a matter of increasing the quantum or frequency of compensation. We need to think how we allow people to shape how they get to the rewards they want. If people are looking for diverse experiences, we need to figure out a way to reward them for that internally. We need to provide pathways to take on extra assignments and compensate for skill intensity in real time. I'm not talking about moonlighting here. We need to provide avenues for internal increases in compensation that can match the market through internal promotions and mobility. And it has to be done much more frequently than before. Further, in line with the argument on talent being available anywhere, we will see norms on location, experience, and qualifications being challenged. Increasingly, we'll have to differentiate on delivered value of skills and take tough calls within organizations on who we want to ring fence. I'm trying to make a very big statement here. What is the talent you will ring fence in the future will be very different from the talent you're ring fencing today. Think about what I'm saying. Any conversation on people would be incomplete without talking about the employee value proposition. So let me conclude with some perspectives on this. Looking at the beliefs we have challenged and how we need to rethink the organization to accelerate growth, the question and proposition is not one of what needs to change, but rather what needs to endure and what we need to significantly amplify our efforts on. We need to help our people find purpose at work. Values are the cornerstone of this. And my problem again in learning and development is that that's the last item on the agenda. When I came to Access, I had done a simple survey of what people understood from our values. What is that? We had given a definition, but what do they really understand? And what came out was everyone's definition of those values is different. Everyone means broadly. Everyone thought about ethics differently. Everyone thought about teamwork differently. Everyone thought about customer centricity differently. It is more urgent than ever to be able to not only articulate what the organization stands for, but ensure that it is lived. And it is not easy with an attrition rate all of us talk about. That it is visible and realized to anyone who works with you as an employee, as a customer, or a partner. Values should be felt the moment someone walks in your organization. If it is not felt, your values don't work. You can teach people about values, but frankly, for a new person, they should be felt. Values and culture will be the only enduring distinctiveness for any organization. And while this is not a new concept, we are too often quick to make compromises on this critical agenda in light of other priorities. So I would like, at least from a thematic perspective, for the organizations to focus on that. Development for people has too long been focused on aspects of how we can get them to take on greater managerial responsibility to rise up ranks. If we focus on skills as the new currency at work, we equally need to invest in opportunities to earn them in the workplace. Learning is one aspect of this. Projects, mentoring, internal gigs are also going to be critical. The emerging talent marketplace model, built on the premise that people need to create and build their own internal profiles for growth in organizations that leverage their internal talent to the fullest extent, is the only way to combat talent churn in the long run. Lastly, I do believe we need to maintain a focus on the whole person. Well-being at work is no longer the ambit of HR when they do this once a year program for a week on well-being. We cannot sweat people as resources. Mr. Tharani talked about fixed assets, current assets, becoming crypto. And must recognize that mental and physical health are not just part of that old trope of work-life balance. I think we are underestimating the mental health issues of the current population also. It was not a problem earlier. We knew we had to manage, so we had to manage. Now there are genuine mental issues which are plaguing generally the young population at a very, very large scale. And our part of this celebrating everyday wins, creating an environment of respect and recognition also becomes important. This focus is not separate from performance. Rather, it needs to be embedded in the design of performance and motivation. That brings me to the end of my address. While I did posit that the talent environment is not necessarily broken, we all know that there is much to fix in order for talent to thrive and accelerate growth. I hope we'll have some more conversations through questions. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. I think you've covered a lot of ground and given a lot of wisdom. And what I'd like to do in the time we have, we will try and catch up with some time because work-life balance is important. We've done a little more work than we should have by taking time out from this session, so I'll try and bring it back. So 3 things on which I want to ask you one question each before we open it to the public participants. So one is there are 3 things we're talking about. We're talking about hiring, what's happening to that, and just using the phrase of what's broken in that process. And then developing people, which is the bulk of the effort. And everyone here is busy doing that. But I'm going to pose this question of everybody here has a role to do with how we train the people who hire, for example. And then how do we train the people we have? And then the big question of retaining. You talked about attrition being the big question. So therefore, training managers and supervisors on how to make sure that we can retain the people who are doing the job. So on hiring, I think what's broken is the fact that with this virtual hiring, the malpractices have flourished to a level where people have finessed methods to be mimicking as though they're giving an answer and there's a phone where someone else is speaking on your behalf. It's rampant. At least in the IT sector, we've seen a lot of that. Then there's mass hiring because we don't know what percentage of people will come. So you want 10, you hire 20 and hope that 10 will come, but you don't know which 10 will come, right? So the volume of work has got built up. And this is the old saying which all good companies had was to hire for attitude and train for skills. And in some ways, I think that holds when you talk of vision and values, you have to judge whether that matches because that can't be changed so easily. What personal belief system has to. So then how do we train the hiring people who have to deal with much larger numbers because of attrition and the probability of joining to look for this capability? How do they judge? It's very much more difficult to judge attitude than skill. And so, given this, what are the actions you would suggest to these folks here when they have to train the people who do hiring, which has become a mechanical process, that how do we control the errors that happen in the hiring process? Any views on that?
So, as you very rightly pointed out, the innovative mind works best in doing stupid things rather than doing real things. So, we are seeing a lot of these practices creep in. My view is that technology will continue to develop to ensure that we can catch some of these people who are finding these ways to do it. Worst come worst case, some of these people who come in very quickly, one realizes that they are not the people we wanted to hire and you have to ease them out. Not a good thing to do, but you have to do that. But let me go back to a more fundamental issue. I think with the scale at which India wants to play in the global marketplace and what all of us expect India to perform in the next decade, couple of decades, and if the growth story does pan out, even partly pans out, we have to be mentally prepared that you will get talent up to a certain level. Our colleges or whatever they are taking people up to only a certain level. They are almost like factories. And we as learning and development people will have to convert us, not a fully polished stone, but it's a semi-precious or even a rough stone into something what we want. It is something it's better we accept. Now, I'm talking about obviously the people who are coming in at entry level. This does not cover the people who are being hired laterally, and some of these malpractices can be there also. But I think if the lateral people do that, the penalty they might pay for doing something like this will be very, very high. So my view is that I think a mindset has to be you get a below average person, and I'm not trying to brand everyone that way, and your organization should have the ability to convert that individual into an above average. And, I think there are examples of organizations or examples of people where when the organizations have done well over a long period of time, you would have seen individuals in those organizations also do well and behave in the marketplace as if they were great talent to start with. I think when you look at even say BFSI and compare organizations, including ours, in some organizations, people behave as if they're the best out there. And I keep reminding my people internally that they are the same talent. The reason they're looking good or the reason they're acting that way is because they've done well. So why don't you focus on doing well rather than focusing on who has better talent? Let's focus on that. So I think let's also not forget the fact that if the organizations in general provide the growth opportunities, the distinctive experiences, allow people to grow, they learn a lot along the way and they become good people over a period of time. So while the hiring practices will be what they are and we'll use our templates and algorithms and keep finessing it as we move forward and ensure that we hire only from those institutes or work with partners like NIIT who do half of the hiring process. So hopefully you're building in some standard. Because then you can outsource it to the right people who will ensure that some of these malpractices don't happen. And I think, let me make another macro point. Because of technology, because of all these changes coming in, Mr. Pawar, what will also happen is, in every field, you will have 3 or 4 large organizations. So if, for example, NIIT sees this as an opportunity to ensure the process, not to hire people, but to ensure that I will guarantee that the hiring process works, and it has an NIIT stamp of guarantee, there'll be only 3 or 4 organizations who can do it. There will not be 30 organizations. So in every field, you will find that larger organizations are coming in and guaranteeing a certain level of certainty to the process. And that is a business in my mind. Because, say, Axis Bank will not do it, but someone with, I'm not suggesting a business model to you, but I'm just saying there is an opportunity there. And people who do it right will get more and more of the business. For example, even in, I think, the testing side, there are only 1 or 2 companies who are very large. Others have all fallen by the wayside. When India's, so much of testing going on in India for, IITs and IIMs and whatever. There are only 3, 4 companies left. Others can't manage the whole show. So my view is that that's how it will evolve over a period of time.
And in that, the induction program, which is coming to the L&D part of the early people coming in, do you see that changing also to make sure that you weed out even at that time? You have an opportunity to see the errors that happen and weed out, rather than saying, okay, whoever comes, we hired him, it's our responsibility. That used to be the good old mindset. We owe that to the person. But if such a person is not going to thrive, and it could be smart, could be dull, could be whatever, is not going to thrive, is there a role for L&D in the early pre-production stage to do something to make sure that those who go past the induction have imbibed some things you want them to imbibe, but also been?
I couldn't agree with you more. See, some principles of management will work in any environment. Tough decisions have to be taken at the right time. If you're taking a tough decision at the wrong time, frankly, you have no choice. That's why you're calling it a tough decision. But, these decisions should be taken, empowerment should be given. Problem is we hesitate. We hesitate because if L&D lets X number of people go, the hiring person is looking bad. We are part of the same fraternity. So we say, okay, let's manage. And the moment we start managing the whole process or every element of that process, it just leads to more and more inefficiency over a period of time. So yes, it is very important to admit a mistake, obviously have a feedback mechanism, loop it back, and move on in life. I used to run a BPO company. I keep telling everyone who I talk to that in everything I start looking at a process. It has to be run like a process. And that process has to be tight enough where people cannot escape it. There cannot be any escape clause there. This is what happens. You come in, you are tested, you don't clear it. Sorry, you need to move on. As simple as that.
So that's about the first part. Now we come to the main part, which is the developing of talent. Now the issue here really is, as you rightly said, that you cannot work on the assumption that someone comes in and stays with you forever and you have the opportunity to give them challenges to do and they grow and you give inputs. So the tenure of people will be shorter. And the employees are, if you've seen some of the memes and the funny thing going around on the internet, that person saying that I'm not an employee, I'm a vendor. That's the equation between the employer and the employees changing to a far more transactional equation. And this work from home is changing the view of work-life balance. I think you talked about that. So we cannot generalize at all. It's really going down to a person at an individual level. A young lady just got married, gone to the in-laws' house, sees a mother-in-law, she wants to come to work. She wouldn't like to stay at home. So I think it's and then when she has some children, then she may want to do that. So I think this balance question is going to be dynamic. And transactions will determine how people move forward. So the whole question of saying, should we train for today for skills, or should we today train for the potential the person has? How should this be handled? What will be the sweet spot to look at?
So, I think given the answer, it is a balance. You cannot just be changing the person for the future. Then who will do today's job? Someone has to do today's job. But at the same time, I think the level of clarity maybe which L&D, and I'm just taking L&D or even HR, has in terms of what changes are going to happen in the organization in the next 3 to 5 years. Because of the lack of that clarity, HR and L&D also does not know what are the changes and what are the things they need to teach the people on about the future. They have an idea. They have an idea, oh, digital technology is coming, people will work from home, transactional. But what changes? How will the organization look like? What are some of the new skill sets that will be required? What will be the challenges in those new jobs that will get created? What is the dynamics of, the various people who will be involved doing the job? I do not think enough time is spent by the management team or HR and L&D in understanding it. I think if they understand that better, their ability to craft things around what the future could look like will be much better. So right now, my belief is, and I'm not saying that Axis is doing a great job here, my belief is that L&D, HR is a generation behind, maybe L&D is 1.5 generations behind, because they're not with the flow in terms of what changes are coming. They're guessing it. And the management is not spending enough time at times to let the L&D people know these are the changes we want from you. So that connect has to happen.
So you talked about disconnect even in the first phase of people coming in and the L&D doing induction. And now you talk of L&D not in touch with strategy. So would job rotation at a more aggressive basis solve this problem to some extent?
I would say the only way L&D would know what to do is that, yes, obviously we need to get people from the businesses into L&D, but a lot of them don't want to do that. But have L&D people or HR people of the right kind who can understand and then take it to L&D, part of those discussions, those thought processes, being in those, call it seminars, or being forced to look at what changes are coming which will become relevant to our employees in the future. And frankly, management has a role to play. I'm not saying it's all L&D. I think management itself has to pick it up and ensure that happens. But the best place for L&D to learn what is going on is to play roles in strategy, is to go and play a role on the business front end. I think that's where they will understand what the changes are, what the customers are expecting, what are you hearing in terms of what the new expectations customers are presenting to you and how you're reacting to it. My worry is there's a huge distance between that front end and where L&D people are sitting. So they continue to do the things the way they were doing. Not their fault, I'm sorry, not their fault. But that's the way it is.
So there's a role for leadership to do L&D of the L&D folks by getting them around.
Absolutely. And we're not doing enough of that.
Yeah. And the last question I had was regarding retention, where you talked of moonlighting, we talked of recruiters getting extremely innovative and creative and highly aggressive. And we talk of this gig worker mentality. People are looking at experiences. And of course, you do talk of companies creating good experiences as a way for retention. And this whole idea of people saying, why should I have a 3-month notice period? There's a big issue. Things around notice period. So in terms of this question of retention, since I know that many CEOs today are really spending a lot more time on this than ever before, any tricks or best practices or things that you have experimented with which have helped in retention, which L&D should play a role in?
So I told you we're running a project Thrive, and we are not thriving. It's a project. So there's obviously we're doing some 30 things there, because there's no one big bang approach here. You have to do 30, 35 things and see which works. So we are having, obviously, so you're seeing a lot of attrition, from joining till 9 months, our attrition rate is very high. We realized that, especially in the COVID period, the connect with the organization, the way we were dealing with them, what managers were doing was not really working for us, and we did things around it. Attrition has come down, still high, but definitely come down. We were losing a lot of people in typical, specific skills like IT and analytics, the same age-old problem. I think all the organizations have that. So we are trying to see whether we can create, we're working with people like NIIT, create a stream where we hire young people, train them, and then bring them in and have a continuous flow, so that, firstly, people are learning as they're going along, they're enhancing their skill sets. And we are also quite clear that after 3 or 4 years they want to go, it's fine with us, because, you have ensured that you got them, what you wanted out of them over a period of time. Some people obviously stay and then they become senior managers in the organization. What is not working for us is, this at the front end, the young people who seem to be shifting for this small increment in salary. Because, we do 2 internal surveys, we do 2 external surveys on our satisfaction advocacy scores. Our satisfaction advocacy scores are above 90. And I was sharing with you, our frontline attrition is upwards of 35%. So it is obviously not working. So they are jumping for this, and somewhere for them, the brands are all the same. The banks are all the same. I end up doing the same job. So, I'm just getting a higher salary for doing the same thing. How does it matter? I have friends here, I have friends there also. So don't tell me that, oh, you've created a network here. I have everything which you have here in the other organization. I have to work hard there, well, you make me work hard here also. So what is the big difference? So somewhere that connect is missing. So what we're planning to try is that, we were obviously caught up in the same, that promotion once a year, and for some of the frontline it was twice a year. We are now seriously thinking that we will close the funnel on hiring from outside and force people to promote people internally much faster than before. So you can get, people get promoted every month. That's what we're seriously thinking about. And what is wrong with promoting people? Not a person gets promoted every month, but promotions will happen every month in the organization. So rather than they seeking the role outside, they get it internally. And the problem is that we are normally always tough with people internally than externally. So hopefully it will help people feel that they are growing and they're growing faster rather than seeking something outside. But very few of our things, maybe they're helping us in controlling attrition, not reducing it. But we're trying very, very hard. By the way, our board is actively looking at attrition. It's not just the management team.
Good. I'm sure a lot of time will be spent in these days here looking at the issue. So now I'd like to open it for questions from the audience. We'll take maybe 2 questions so we can save about 10 or 15 minutes from there's a question right in the back. Get the mic there, please. You just identify yourself and then.
Hi, I'm Priya. I'm from First Source. I head the Content Development Center of Excellence. Couple of things you spoke about, both of you, about how people are staying for lesser period of time, but skilling has become an important EVP for them. Now, my question is, what I'm experiencing is the change in culture that you talked about. That I was brought up in a culture where you spend a lot of time, become an expert in that field, and I know there are gurus who will teach you, right? Now, young kids come in, they don't want to be coached that much, and they also are not very interested in investing too much. The moment they get a little bit of expertise, they jump, right? So my question, I'm really trying hard to wrap my head around that, because I was, tempered by my masters, and now I can't, because I have to be nice to them and, not be hard on them. But my question is the guru system gone? No, are we working in a world of agile expertise, not like somebody who had 10 years of experience doing the same thing, becoming a big expert, from somebody who learns something in 1 year, does something, moves away? And is the guru form of the expert form of it has become obsolete?
My view is, yes, it is becoming obsolete. And frankly, by the way, these people who are jumping don't necessarily, as you rightly said, have the skill set. Right. There are 2 problems there. One, we are making the statement that an organization outside is willing to test them and give them a chance on this limited skill set they've acquired, right, but we are not willing to do. Somewhere there is that, that hurdle, and all of us, I'm also very much a part to it. We don't want to do it, but someone else is. And when, by the way, we hire from outside, suddenly we drop the guard and we're willing to, based on limited experience, give them this job. So somewhere that mindset has to change. This ability to take a risk, knowing fully well that it could go wrong. And I think somewhere as a L&D practitioner, you have to change it and change the organization's view on this. And secondly, at the same time, cut losses it will become obvious to the individual. People are quite smart. They know they're not being able to do the job, whatever the responsibility they're given, quite well. Right. To say that you need to spend a little bit more time in doing it, maybe we have to diffuse the responsibility a little bit. So I think it just means more rapid change, more agility, and it also at the same time means our ability to monitor the performance of the individual cannot be months. It has to be days, weeks,
sure,
and continuous, which means more people or more use of technology to be able to ensure that we can capture that very, very quickly.
Thank you.
The job is becoming more interesting for L&D people. That's
excellent question. And I think the agility of the company has to get faster than the agility of the youngster. I think that's the message that's coming. Okay, next question.
Hi, I'm Shivani and I'm from NatWest. I take care of the Technology Academy. I resonate what you said, it's now the time of skills as currency. And from our perspective, we have stopped talking about I'm hiring an engineer to moving to a skills conversation. Am I hiring a Java or a Python engineer? And you talked of one very interesting thing, the internal marketplace or talent marketplace on skills. Just a bit more on what is Access doing around it and something which is good to know for us.
Well, we have, like everyone else, internal job portal and all that. But, let's understand the reality of what really happened. So first, we did not have that. It was not functional. We got it functional. We have said there are a certain number of jobs which need to come through that. But I know deep inside as a CEO that a lot of these jobs are also managed. A person is identified, then the IGP process starts. We know what happens, right? And then the person gets the job. We need to take it to a different level, and what we really, so that's why just doing one thing doesn't work. You have to get everyone in a room and then shut all the doors. There's only one door. What we don't do very well as a management team is that we bring people into a room but keep all the doors open, so everyone exits through different doors. So that's when I said that we are going to have the internal job portal, we are going to move towards faster promotions, and we will close the funnel on external hiring. So I'll stop that throttle also. You will not have that option. Then you will be forced to take some risks. And that's what we'll do. But yes, the internal job portal is there, it works, but is it that efficient? I've got my question marks. It was not there earlier for Access. Now we are a large organization. See, that's the problem. When I go to say retail asset, since you mentioned NatWest, right? So you'll understand what I'm saying. People have been in mortgage all their life, the people like us, who they have not done any other job. So if you go and tell them, oh, by the way, rapid promotions, go somewhere else, they cannot imagine themselves somewhere else. So it's also about pushing them to try some different risks and say, if you fail, don't worry, I'll bring you back. But try. So there is a lot of, it's not just one thing. You have to do 15 things to ensure that it works, and keep trying and keep tinkering till you get it right. And my view is it is not the same for every organization. It's different for every organization. Because your context is different, your culture is different, your people are different, your growth path is different. So it's very specific to an organization.
Sure, thank you.
Take one more question.
My name
Okay.
is
Yeah, go ahead.
My name is APS Gandhi. I'm from Daikin. So this question comes from the fact that you said that the young generation today, they are more individualistic rather than in their CVs also they are writing about themselves more than the organization. Whereas one of the most important need for the organization is, to deal or to showcase to the customer an experience as a brand. I'm sure I deal with your bank also. I deal with, by the way, SBI also. So when I go to SBI, my expectation is different. Whereas when I go to Axis, expectation is different. Now these youngsters, when they just want to, build on their own self, how do you, align them to the brand vision or the cultural things of the organization to give that to the customer? Because ultimately we all are working for the customers.
No, it's a very, very relevant question. We actually are running a project internally called Customer Obsession. Our aim there is to take our NPS score to 80. It's a global standard, right? So the companies with the best customer service experience have NPS scores of that kind. NPS score of 80 basically means that everyone is advocating for you, basically. So, and by the way, when we started our journey, we were just a shade below 40. And we know it's an 8 to 10 year project. So it is about, again, building rituals, practices, way of working in a team. You might be predicting yourself as a separate brand outside, but internally, what rituals you follow, what processes you create, how you digitize the journeys. And when I say rituals as teams, rituals as individuals, rituals in front of the customer. When you are in that ecosystem, you are expected to behave in a certain way that you can ensure and make it easy when you're going through that process, that they enjoy doing it. See, when you serve the customer well, no one can take away the fact that if the customer turns around and says, thank you, and I really appreciate what you did, everyone feels good. I feel good, the team feels good. So they might be going for a different skills experience, but they also want that experience to come through. So it's a question of just finding the right balance. Hard work, very, very hard work. As I said, 8 to 10 year project for us.
Okay, so I think we'll now bring this to a close. I know that there's a commitment you have as well. So thanks so much. I think there are far too many good ideas. I don't want to summarize, but I do want to state that the chief executive's visibility of what's happening right up in front and a continuous desire to shape the culture. Many of the things we talked about here were culture. Tell your people to take a risk and so on. I think those will continue to become more and more important in this period of a transactional life for people. You still want to have your brand visible, and the brand stands for something, and people are moving in large numbers. So what do you do to prepare your leadership team and the supervisors who can then select well, who can create newer opportunities and challenges for people so they prefer to stay inside rather than go out? Thank you so much. Thanks so much.